I don't know. Do I have that option? I don't know.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Chichester Chats. I'm Phil. That's Lilith. And of course, the man, the brand himself. It is Mr. DG Chichester. Hello, sir.
I am a brand now. Wow. Thanks, guys. I appreciate the chance to come on here and talk about Alan Smithy and his run on Daredevil because he doesn't often get a chance to speak for himself. But more importantly, thanks for having me back. So
Hey,
hope you're
no
both doing
problem.
well.
No problem. Yes, we're talking that one arc Alan wrote for, Daredevil 338 through 342. So. All right. So seriously, I mean, getting down to it, so for those of you who don't know, Alan Smithy is like a pseudonym like writers use, right?
It is traditionally been used, and maybe up to this point. I think if you look at Wikipedia, this may be the only time it's noted in comics. It actually says that under the Alan Smithy entry. Alan Smithy was a name that film directors would use to put on films that they felt they had directed, but they no longer wanted their name associated with it because they thought something had happened to the film that ruined their quote unquote vision or creative control was taken away from them. So they didn't want their reputation besmirched by what they felt was going to be subpar end product and film. So Alan Smithy became a known name that film directors would put on films. So if you look through various films, you can sometimes see an Alan Smithy film directed by Alan Smithy, and that is always associated with some other director who chose to not have his or her name associated with it. So Alan, on a break from filmmaking, clearly came over and decided to work in the field of comic storytelling.
All right. Before we get to the elephant in the room, so
I'm gonna make you unpack this. I'm not gonna
yes.
like, you know,
Oh
I'm
no, no,
not
no. I know.
and
I
you
know.
know,
I know.
and I'm not gonna, obviously I'm not gonna be shy about anything. I'm not giving this to you. You gotta like unpack
No,
this.
no.
This
Yeah.
will be more fun.
Before we get to that elephant in the room, so honestly, this was your last arc, and like you said, you had no idea this was your last arc, correct?
That is true. This is good unpacking. Daredevil had transitioned from its longtime home with Ralph Macchio as the editor and in his office, and suddenly Matt Murdock had gotten packaged into a line of books, which, if I remember correctly, was called something like Marvel Knights, Knights, because nobody else had done that before, and they were going to be all the street characters. So they weren't necessarily going to immediately interact, but they were sort of a family. So I think the Punisher was in there. Anybody who was more street worthy.
It was very.
So,
Was it that Marvel Edge? Because it was kind of weird. Because it was.
oh, maybe it was Marvel Edge.
I
Was it
think that's
Marvel
what it
Edge?
was. It was like
Yeah, you're
Punisher
right.
and stuff, but it's like it was so
Yeah,
weird. Because didn't they like group the Hulk in there?
I mean,
I
because
think it was. Yeah, it was very weird.
Bobby had Hulk. So yeah, maybe it was Marvel Edge. It was something like that.
Yeah.
And something tough, something street. And so it had moved from Ralph's office, suddenly packaged over there. This was under Bobby Chase's domain because now Bobby was, I believe, an editor in chief of the Marvel Edge. So suddenly, I think Marvel had 5 editor in chiefs. And then Daredevil under that was directly assigned to Marie Javins, who I knew well and considered a friend and do consider a friend. And she's gone on to something, I think, else in comics. And like running DC. But I had known her from when she was an intern. She was an intern at Epic. She'd come in through her college internship. And um, so she had taken it over. So I was upset for Ralph. I was upset for, because I had a great relationship with Ralph. But I assume business as usual, especially because we still had a bit of fall from grace glow around the book. We had done Tree of Knowledge and Elektra and such, and we had planned a lot of things. So, the run on the Daredevil book was going to be smaller stories and then bigger stories. Sort of like, here's a more personal story. 4 or 5 issues, then a bigger fall from grace type story, then a smaller story. That was kind of the rhythm there. And then there were several um, Daredevil specific projects that Ralph and I had been planning that were going to be sort of mini series. At one point we'd almost talked about like a kind of a corner box, for this Daredevil sub universe, like almost like a street thing of its own, because there was going to be this Daredevil time travel story where he went back to old New York, like Boss Tweed, 18 something, and had to deal with the streets of New York in that time. And there was a Daredevil almost year two type of thing that we were talking about doing, since Frank Miller and John Romita, had Junior had done sort of like the Daredevil year one. So we were talking about like, okay, let's do something else in that time frame. There may have been one other. So there were a lot of plans. So when I called up Marie, or she called up me, um, uh, that first day, or whatever it was, and I said, hey, okay, you got the book, and wanted to kind of go over the plans and let me outline the stop talking, Dan. you know and it was just this thing where Marie had been put in a very, very uncomfortable position of basically, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but you're off the book. And so I don't know how I was ever to know I was off the book. um but that was kind of the gist of it. Like, you're all, I'm not supposed to tell you, but you're off the book. And this was kind of the ploy of some people of how they would take people off books, that they would just not tell them, so people
Wow.
would actually do work. A colorist would do work, or writer would do a script, thinking, hey, it's my next issue, I'm going to get ahead. They'd send it in with the voucher, and then the voucher would come back, you know denied. That was not the case here, but certainly the sense of what the fuck, excuse me, edit it out, or put a big echo
I'll leave
effect
that
around
in.
that. Put a big echo effect around that for post production. What the fuck, 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 fuck. Um, the because it wasn't only, well, it was like personally, professionally, what's just happened. But it knocked the blocks out of a lot of, I'll say, financial security, right? This wasn't only Daredevil as an ongoing book, which is a nice um anchor, to have.
No, yeah.
But okay, now, well, that miniseries over there was going to be a boost here. That miniseries over here was going to be a boost here. That sense that we were building something out was suddenly, taken away, or arbitrarily, really, in the sense that it wasn't even um, okay. I've this new editorial team, and over time, I came from Epic, and we had a certain point of view around working with creative teams. I didn't realize the severity until actually really recently, when I was talking to Howard Mackey,
Oh.
when of the severity of like the Marvel editors' attitude towards some creative teams, where it's like, okay, you're done. I'm the editor, done. Um, but my feeling was that I should have worked. Let's work together. You have a different attitude about Daredevil under this Marvel edge. Let's tell me what it is. We'll take the book in that direction. We'll take the character in that direction. We'll play it out. Maybe I'm not good for that, right? Issue two in, and then it's like, Dan, you're not working out. We don't like what you're doing. You're gone. But no, it's just like, we've already pre-decided you're gone, and which I guess they could have based that on reading other issues. But it was, yeah, it was a bad day, and I called, geez, who was the guy's name? I can't remember at the moment, but whoever was the president or CEO of Marvel at that point. And I remember calling him up, and Terry something, and and just, I don't know, trying to play some card, because I knew him a little bit, and just basically saying, look, listen, I've been a good player for Marvel. I've done this and that, and I've been a good quote unquote soldier, and this is sort of disrespectful behavior, and what are you guys going to do for me, and what else are you going to give me? And he seemed to take it uh, to heart. He said, I agree with you, and you're right, and I'm going to talk to Bobby, and we're going to make this right, not necessarily get me Daredevil back, but maybe get me some kind of bridge something or whatever. And I thought that was going to at least generate something, but it never did. And I was so rocked by the whole thing that it was I didn't pursue it more, which I should have.
I mean, in hindsight, do you think did it have anything to do? I mean, I don't think they were there yet, but like the bankruptcy was like looming in the future. Would that have anything to do with it? Was business kind of on shaky ground at that point, or
Yeah, because that Marvel Edge thing only lasted for like a
yeah,
year.
it
Like
didn't
that,
last.
Well,
like
because
the
it was
onslaught.
yeah,
Yeah,
that was just because it was also a bad idea. It was
Oh yeah,
five editor in chiefs. Where's the consistency in that? Where this
yeah. That's
this this
yeah.
this
Vanity
weird
titles at that point.
right, and weird groupings that don't really make sense. An X-Men universe, yes, makes sense. Spider-Man universe makes sense. A bunch of characters that don't really associate with each other, but you suddenly call it Edge.
well, even back then, I always took that as, oh, well, these are the characters we're gonna like throw together because we don't have a group to put them in because they aren't X Men. They're
Well,
not.
Right.
oh yeah, and now that I remember reading about like that 1994 when Tom DeFalco got kind of like ousted, and that's kind of
Mm,
like that
mm-hmm.
fallout from there. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Right. Tom was a very consistent, you know,
yeah.
at one single editor in chief, right? That's sort of not that things always have to be done traditionally, but I think there's a value in that. And I don't, I've never talked to Bobby about this. I've never, and this is, and at this point, I don't want to. It's a little bit beyond the time and the pale. All I've ever been able to think, Phil, is this was sort of post Night Stalker. I think I was in good shape in Bobby's mind and office at one point, and which is why they brought me in on Night Stalker and whatever. But I think this is post me being taken off Night Stalkers because I had complained about something,
Mm,
and there had been a change in the scene. The artist had changed. The art came back on the next issue with the where the artist had totally changed up what I had written. Not that what I wrote you know was unimpeachable, but it was like, okay, you have a scene here, and suddenly you have a scene on top of the Chevron sign in Boston, which is kind of a well-known landmark, and suddenly it's just an alleyway with fire escapes that look like they're out of a bad New York set, from movies in the 50s. And it was like, what's this? It's like, well, the editor told me to change it. It was a new editor on the book as well, and I called that editor up and I said, what's going on here? um and it's like, well, clearly you're not a team player, you're off the book. So I don't know. I don't think it was a financial thing, because there was a scatter. It wasn't like, oh, we're replacing Dan with
some new guy.
with a new guy, a hot property, or a Frank wants the book back, Frank Miller wants the book back or something like that. We're kicking him off. It was a one issue Warren Ellis, let's piss on the costume follow up, and then it was a short run by Mark DeMatteis, who I love. I love
Yeah.
Mark to death as a writer and as a person. I didn't like that story. I don't think that he clued into the right things. I think he was either charged with or felt he had to undo things and did it in a Matt's insane type way. So that's no diss on Mark, but Mark only lasted, I believe, a short time. I think it was that run of the
Oh yeah,
title.
it might have been like 6 issues or something.
Yeah, and then he's gone. So it wasn't like, oh,
Yeah, that was a tumultuous time for sure, all
yeah. So
around.
there wasn't a, oh, let's boost Daredevil by doing this. So I think there was some kind of personal, professional animus to the way I was approaching the book, and it's like, let's just get this guy off without even talking about it, right? You know, and like, you know, it'd be good to have heard, hey, you write too many words, you don't understand the character, uh, whatever, you know, something
Yeah, no,
would have been.
it just seems odd because I mean, Fall from Grace sold so well, right? And Tree of Knowledge was popular. I mean, did good too. So I don't know why. You know, is it just
Yeah, and I was well associated with the title, and I was the consistent association with the title, since other people had kind of come and gone. And I don't think I was despised,
no?
you know.
I mean, I loved your stuff, but I just trying to look at it objectively. I mean, it had to have been popular, and you know, you had to have been a team player because if people were talking about spinning stuff off, and
Oh yeah. We
yeah,
had we had a ton of stuff. Like I said, you know, Electra was going to be the first of
yeah.
these spin-off things, and we were going to do. You know, we had people assigned to some of those other books. Paul Ryan at one point was going to do the time travel one. I know we were talking to people about the Daredevil Year 2 thing, and then, as I said, there were other things beyond that, Daredevil related. So we were trying to break Daredevil out of. I mean, Daredevil obviously now is extremely popular, you know, for all good reasons. TV shows, you know, great books, you know, lots of water towers in the Marvel universe. But at that point, you know, he was still in this little silo, and then we were saying, let's leverage what we've done, and let's have more Daredevil, like not just one title. Let's have lots of Daredevil titles. So there's a reason for there's more attention on this guy.
All right, I think we got to the point.
That's just so I'm so disheartened for that happened. Like, you know, you think of it as a business and like, sure, it's not personal, but like actually comic books are very personal. It's a very one-on-one kind of relationship, whether it's the writing team and the editor and so on and so forth. So
Totally. There's a lot of Lilith. That's a great read. And there is. It's a very, while there's a big machine behind it. Yes. You know, especially in a Marvel thing. Yeah. You're very one-on-one, 1-on-4 or 5. You know, when you think about the letterer and the colorist and the inker and, you know, the penciler, the editor, you know, the assistant editor, there's a little small cabal of people that you're working with. And you know, and it was the shock of it, and then it was the and maybe Marie, if she was to talk about this, you know, today, and I'm sure Maria either doesn't remember it because she has 1,000 more things to worry about than this, and has had 1,000 more accomplishments than this. Maybe she remembers it differently. I don't know, but again, I recall her being very uncomfortable with the conversation. Like this was her assignment, right? Get rid of this guy who you know, and without any surround of an explanation, and also without any and it wasn't immediate, right? It was like, well, when's my last issue? You know, and you know, I remember saying, and it was because what did we end up calling the story? Wages of Sin. You know, and I'll tell you about that in a second. But
well, the first title is treachery, so appropriate.
yeah, no, all the titles, Lilith, all the titles are that. Read all the titles; they're all that. They're all like, look, you know, me picking a thing. All the titles are that exactly. Thank you. But the whole story was called Wages of Sin. But I, you know, I said, when's the last book? And she was, well, you know, you can pick. And I said, well, I'll pick, you know what, I'll pick 350. You know, I said, you know,
buddy.
I'll pick 350 then. Fine. You know, it's like, you know, well, you can't do that. You know, so it was, you know, we were into this run, but not finished, right? Maybe I had done a plot or two, but I had not finished. It's not like it's not like the story was done. It had been begun in one form or another, and then it was like slog. Now I, with Alan's help, you know, had to slog through the rest of the story under the shadow umbrella, leaky umbrella of knowing, like, this is it, and this is not the way I'd want to go out, but I have to do this. I needed frankly, I needed the money. I wasn't bankrupt or bereft, but it's like, okay, this is income. This is a business as well as, creativity. So I couldn't, in a fit of pike, just say, fuck me, fuck you. I'm leaving today, which
Yeah.
they probably would have been happy with, right? Then they would have gotten Warren's pissing on the costume story and even quicker.
So is that the whole? Is this why Alan's on the credits? Because
Yeah, I mean it.
they're
Yeah,
like, yeah, this is the last. This is the last arc. I didn't want this to be the last arc, but it's gonna have to be the last.
yeah. In the fit of Pike, the fit of like I'll show them, and who cares, right? Who cared except me? In that sense of I'll stick it to them as if anybody was paying attention, to that. Um, I felt no matter what I did on the story, it wasn't going to matter. No matter what, all the plans I had to kind of get to 350, where we were going to explore more of the Jack Batlin stuff and have Matt realize certain things and have 350 be a big sort of capping of a lot of things. That wasn't going to happen, so all those plans were ruined, and I sort of felt under this under what I could already feel, oppression, not from Marie, not from anything there, but my own kind of oppression of like, I'm in a pretty crappy mood now, and not feeling really great about doing this. I'm just having to do this because I have to do it, as opposed to enjoying it. I felt this story is going to be subpar, and so I don't want my name on it, right? So because of my film school background, this is before everybody knew who Alan Smithy was. I said I'll put out, I'm going to credit it to Alan Smithy, and then Lilith, to your point, as a further rip, whatever I might have been thinking of as the initial titles, all became things like that.
I just looked them up. Treachery,
Betrayal.
betrayal, subversion, duplicity, and malignancy.
Yeah, exactly.
Love
The five deadly sins of Marvel Edge. And that's great.
You forgot
great.
one. It's called Onslaught.
I totally forgot that. That would actually been a great set of villains. If I had to redo the story from page one, that would have been a great like team to sort of like assemble. Like those could have been the five the five deadlier sins. Maybe I'll still use them somewhere. Yeah, so that was the thinking, and the storyline had been a little bit not muddied, up to that point. We had a pretty good idea of what we wanted to do with the story. We knew we wanted to do this, this, like I said, smaller story, because we'd done this bigger story. So now it was going to be a smaller one. Then the next arc was going to be, bigger again. But originally the story was called Mark of Cain, because I was playing with the obviously the biblical stuff, and I was pretty good at coming up with these Steven Seagal like titles. I joked, but it's not a joke. I said, if you look at like 8 out of 10 of those epic collections, 8 to 10 of them, if I'm in there, they've used the title of my story to kind of like name the whole thing, so I must have something going on. But it was called Mark of Cain, and because the villain was originally named the broken bad guyish character, and it was originally named Cain and not Cruel, as he would become. But the Spider offices kind of intervened, and they had a villain that they wanted to introduce called Cain, and they
we know.
Yeah. So
I wish they had just let you have it. Honestly,
this was supposed to be a big thing. It was a big plan. So it was a big request from Danny Fingeroff, that we want to use Cain. So Ralph was like, can we change the story? The story title and the name of the character.
But the whole thing with their Cain is it started with a K and ended in an E. If you had just gone, CAIN, I don't know what the big deal would have been.
Well, Cain and Cain, maybe even for comics, that's too close, especially when they were supposed to be
out
in a
around the same
similar
time. Yeah.
similar timeline. So ultimately, that was not an effect on the story, even if
Yeah.
things had continued to be good. It was just sort of like, but I've been calling it Mark of Cain in my head, and the character's name is Cain, and so you kind of set the hooks in your brain of how things are going to be, and then well, that I mean, listen, that was nowhere near the disruption of you're off the book,
Yeah.
but you got so I'll take Danny's request any day of the week over that other one.
And I mean, so was that always going to be in the story, like the flashback in the beginning of, like, all these people important that would become to be important in Matt Murdock's life in the diner, or did you add that later as, like, kind of like the swan song is like, okay, this is the flash.
No, that was always the story. Was always the story, more or less. I mean, I don't, um, eh, I don't know that it was either executed as well as it might have been if my head was on more straight, but also in retrospect, I don't think it's as bad as I remembered it to be.
Oh,
It's and but that was always basically the story, right? There's a bit of maybe a lot of contrivance that at one point in time all of these people who would later be there were in one place at one time, and this but but not so much, in the form of certain types of storytelling, and certainly comic book storytelling in a certain way, not that that's meant to be derisive. But that was always the story. The story basically was always there, right? The bones of it. Obviously, I hadn't worked out all the details, um, but none of that got changed, and there was no editorial
okay, that was gonna be
backlash
my other question.
influence.
Was that the other thing since
Not
for
a not
Alan?
a word.
No
I mean,
orders, no orders to change anything or do anything.
nothing. I turned the plots in, I turned the scripts in, and that was that. I never went back and checked. I never went back and sort of held the script up. The plots were the same. I never saw like a Night Stalker's like change of, wait a minute, this is supposed to be in the diner, and now it's in the Baxter building or something like that. Uh but I never did go back and look at the script against
Yeah.
the final issue to sort of see, did somebody change the dialogue, did somebody change the captions or something like that. I was done with it by that point, but there was never a peep from Marie or the editorial oversight of, well, it's a good thing we talked you off the book because clearly this thing doesn't work. It was just I think, and again, never talked to her about this, but I sort of felt Marie's attitude was, let's just make this easy as possible.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had no the no this I had no problem with the story. I just wish they would have given you, like, more notice so you could have actually written like an end the ending you wanted.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and and ostensibly, right, Phil, I could have knowing that and not being finished with the plot line, maybe I could have tweaked or leveraged it into being a bit more of a conclusion, but I was right in the middle of a bunch of stuff, at least in
Mhm.
my head.
Oh yeah,
And
there's
this
yeah, there's I mean, there's stuff in here that they never come back to, like that, like the gangster who's kind of like trying to strong arm Jack Batlin, like, oh, you're gonna give me a percentage. They never come back to that or stuff.
No, they come back to nothing.
Yeah.
Batlin is tossed to the curb, quickly, and ultimately Batlin would be tossed to the curb anyway.
Yeah.
But that was always the plan. But I don't know what they did with the Kingpin, But you could see, where I was using the pieces that I had, and I just said, you know what, I'm just going to tell the story, So the Kingpin showing up as, or Kingpins throughout it, but even at the confrontations with Daredevil, oh, you're the new guy, let's start to spar and let's see where this goes, and Fisk being kind of on the uprise, as it were. We're more written as if they were a continuance versus let me suddenly do the conclusion. It's like when TV shows are often and find out that, oh, next week's the last episode, and you get that kludge thing of like, the
Yeah.
supernatural fighters suddenly defeat, the evil overlord, in one episode, even though they've been stretching it on for like 4 years or something like that. So I I I mean, thankfully a much different person then, and now than I was then. Um, so I can't totally translate everything back to that, let alone from a memory point of view. But I can just tell you what I feel is I didn't have it in me to think about like, oh, okay, let me do this as like a wrap up. Let me
Yeah.
conclude this.
How
It was
could you?
more.
Yeah. And
It,
then they also don't think of the fans, like just doing that just like so suddenly. It's just like, yeah,
Well,
it's
you
it's
you got
rough.
it. You got a year of rough Daredevil stories out of that, right? You got you
Yeah.
got you got this story, which was, again, I think in rereading it for this, and and some other things, not as bad as I remembered it, and some good moments, and okay, and I think consistent with aspects of my run. Not my best work, but certainly not a smoking crater. Um, and then you get total waste of time of the friggin' Warren Ellis. It's friggin' waste of money, waste of time. And then you get Mark's story, which is I'm not going to call it a waste of time
Editorial
because
cleanup. That's what it feels like. I'll
yeah,
just be
and Mark's
honest.
a great writer, and I cannot praise him enough. And you can get aspects of his
Oh
worldview and look at things from reading it. Right, he's he's bringing the things he always brings to that, but it's a storyline that means nothing, right? Lilith, as you said, editorial cleanup,
Oh yeah,
and
you
an
could
and
tell he
an
was under orders. Yeah,
and an ultimate. I don't know, assumingly so. Get the
yeah.
costume back, get him out of this, get him back to Matt Murdock and whatever.
Well,
But it's
again, is like his last one was 350, and it's like, yeah, well, look, the status quo is back 350. So
right,
it seems to me,
right,
yeah,
right, and then and then you're done, right?
yeah.
And then it's sort of like, but what does it do for readers? Where did it advance anything? Nothing,
Well,
right?
that's
So
the thing. Yeah, I mean, they probably were all like, "Oh, where's the where's the all the numbers are bad or something." I mean, when it's like they didn't give you consistency after Tree of Knowledge, wasn't there? There was like a fill in arc, and then there was this, and then there was that Warren Ellis, and then
yeah, right. It jumps
yeah,
around, right?
yeah,
Tree of Knowledge was I don't remember if I mean Greg Wright did an arc in there because me and Scott went off to do
yeah. I think it was the one
Elektra.
right before this. Yeah,
Yeah. So he did a Fathoms of
yeah.
Humanity or something like that. But and Greg's a good friend and a really good writer. So
Oh
I
yeah.
trust more what he did than anybody almost.
I mean, besides that Warren Ellis one issue, I mean, everyone else did. I mean, they did good work, but it's just they didn't give any.
It was just so
There
jarring.
was no
Right,
consistency. Yeah, there was
right,
one writer, now
right.
you're back, and then there's, that one fill
Yeah,
in.
it jumps around. Right.
Yeah,
There's no pull through. Yep. Yeah, and there's no. I mean, I think Greg planted a couple of seeds of things or kept things consistent because we would talk a lot about where things were going.
oh
But
yeah. I mean, it didn't seem like it was so far off of what you were doing, but yeah.
right. And then once it's back to that, so it's unfair to readers and the character somewhat, but and then I don't know, then you're off to whatever they were off to after there. And then they asked, me and Lee Weeks to come back for the last one, so we must have done something right. But
Well, I feel like cooler heads prevailed on that, and like I said, it was a really tumultuous time. I don't know if the writers felt it, but like when you read back on that time about what was going on, like from like '94 to like '97, that was a really rough time at the top levels and a lot of infighting and stuff. And
oh, of
unfortunately,
course, of
sometimes there was
course.
just like a lot of blood. there was bloodshed for sure.
Yeah, I mean that was the cratering of the industry, and there was mass
Yeah.
layoffs and
It's just
yeah,
unfortunate that they felt so the need to be so unprofessional about it all. I guess like that kind of shocks me. Like
yeah. Like I said, I'm not surprised by that office, not Marie, but above, in the sense of other things I had seen and heard. But you're never going to have a good you're gone situation unless you deserve it, right? Like,
yeah,
oh, I'm late on the book and I've been late consistently, and an editor says I gave you two chances, three strikes, you're out, or something like that. that's on me or that's on somebody. Or we asked you to move the book in this direction and you didn't, and you clearly are not going to, so we're going to go in different directions, or we've decided to go in a different direction because we're bringing in such and such. And I guess that's sort of like what this was, but it was also just, it was just out of nowhere. And again, Marie's opening gambit, at least as I remember it, was, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but you're off the book. As if it was going to come up later, or it was just going to be that thing where I would send in a story. What was the last issue of Wages of Sin? Of whatever it was, and me sending in the next plot with a voucher and then just getting it back denied, because you're not on the book anymore.
You wouldn't piss on the suit.
I wouldn't piss on the suit. That is. I did not read that story until recently, and for one reason or another, certainly.
It's just so weird. He's not in any Daredevil suit in that issue. It's just so weird.
No, it literally is 22 pages of ripping apart the biomimetic suit, which couldn't really be destroyed in that fashion, purposely, written and researched, in that way. But if I had read that story immediately afterwards, I think I said to you guys before, I probably would have killed myself, just out of pure depression and oh my God. Now I read it and I laugh hysterically at it, but it's a waste of time. It is just literally, and especially more so because it's a Brit, writing it. It's, let's take the piss out of this suit by literally pissing on it. And if it was written today, I'm sure they would have had a scene with, a stream of urine coming from off panel and splattering across the biomimetic, panels on the shoulder or something like that.
Written by Frank Miller.
No, well, maybe no. The Ellis was definitely in high Ellis, form doing that. But it's just basically saying, to me, it's. But you approve this suit, you Marvel, giant entity, big enterprise.
Yeah.
It wasn't like me and Ralph and Scott McDaniel and Pat Garrahy said, "How are we gonna do this over here?" Right? People approved it. It was used in other issues. It was used as a toy. Right?
I was gonna say, we have toys to prove it.
not just the modern day toy, but there was an older toy. There was trading cards. There was this. There was that. So but somebody clearly hated it, and editorially,
it definitely felt punitive. That issue felt punitive.
Yeah, exactly.
That or they hear 5 fans complain about it, or oh no,
they got 3 letters about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that must mean 5 million people hate it.
Again, it was the 90s. Everyone got armor, and that Daredevil suit was some of the better armor.
Like I said, it was real research.
Yeah,
it made sense within the context, unlike some of that other armor stuff.
Have the scene where he's like, well, it seems like I don't need this anymore, and hang it up in the Daredevil closet or the Daredevil cave or something like that. But just that whole sense of, I'm insane, I don't know what I'm doing, after the whole setup was he's consciously doing this.
I know.
For very specific reasons, not because he doesn't know that he's not Jack Batlin. Oh my God, I changed my name and I live in Alphabet City now, and this has completely broken my brain. It's crazy.
Even though I made the conscious decision to do that to try to protect everyone in my life. But
right.
Yeah.
Right. Literally there's a scene where he stands at the edge of the grave, right? If this be my destiny, and he's literally espousing, exposition wise on what he's done and why he's doing it. But clearly that was not enough. It's given me a good laugh. 30 years later. So that's good.
Can I ask you a question? Say, because the 90s are hot and back in full swing in comics at the big 2, right?
Yes.
If they asked you back, would you go?
If they said, "Hey, we're going to give you a 5-issue Daredevil miniseries," would you do it?
Sure. I have no negative.
Okay, good. We can start the
whatever
petition.
Issues. I have no negative things against Marvel. I have no negative things against the character.
Oh,
That's,
oh yeah. I'm gonna start trumpeting that on social media, Lil. Yeah,
but I mean, but I mean, they're doing the work on Daredevil now is that I've seen is top notch, right? It's great how expanded and expansive the character is,
but yes, but Chip is leaving soon. I did see that. I don't know if they've named.
Oh, is he?
But
Oh, I didn't know
yeah,
that.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
he's
Oh.
got so many other creator-owned things going. I can only imagine
Yeah.
how hard it is to be running that
To
Daredevil
juggle all
book.
that stuff.
And
Oh, I
plus,
didn't realize that.
and plus
Yeah.
he's writing Batman at DC now. So
Yeah.
I knew that,
Yeah.
but I thought that was kind of cool. I thought that was like
Oh, yeah,
part of the whatever the
Yeah.
the appeal, and that's the modern day, I guess, smart power of certain creators. Because at one point there was always a sense of, well, if you're
Can't do
working for
both.
DC,
Yeah.
you can't do both, right? There was that unspoken, not rule necessarily, but I think kind of mental thing. If you're in
You had to
here,
quit and walk across the street. Yeah.
right. Or in Tom DeFalco, jokingism of like, here's your cab fare to DC. It's like, but and sometimes you'd literally throw money at people, and but.
I just want a Tom DeFalco Chronicle. Somebody needs to write the book.
Tom is and I didn't appreciate this at the time as much as I should have. I think Tom is a font of knowledge and good comic storytelling and a very funny guy. So yeah, you should find a reason to interview Tom at some point in one of your many shows.
Just start at
Phil, get on it.
I will get on it. Just to start the conversation. Oh yeah.
Hey, remember this panel?
Just start the conversation with, yes, Mr. Chichester told us many stories about you, and he's probably like, they're all true.
They're all in retro. Any story I've ever told you about Tom is and I hope it's always come across that way is in retrospect of my naivete or ego, not always taking things in the best way. But I like the fact and sense a sense of storytelling maturity to be able to look back and sort of say, to appreciate, what was being offered. And sometimes you're not always smart enough to take that, and run with it in the right way.
Oh, Phil, you wanted me to remind you since it is
it
is Frank Miller May.
No, we just
what's Frank Miller May?
We're doing all kinds of episodes on like different stuff. Frank Miller's either written or drawn
or both.
Yeah, or both. So one of the
directed. Don't,
yeah.
We've already covered Sin City technically.
Don't and the Spirit. Don't forget.
Oh yeah, but we just did Elektra Assassin.
Yeah, I was like, duh, it's epic. In like the late '80s, early '90s.
Elektra Assassin was.
It just tickles. I cracked the first issue, and
you crack open the cover, and it's just your name.
It's just assistant editor Daniel Chichester. I'm like, oh yeah,
Daniel, right? Like when I was
that's
more pretentious.
I think I even texted Lilith. I'm like, young Daniel worked on this book.
Yeah. Young Daniel, exactly.
It's Electra Lives too. You did you do that one too? I had that book somewhere. Again?
Yeah. I worked. I don't know if I'm credited.
I think your name is in the credits. Yeah, I have the hardcover, and I saw your name.
I was the assistant, certainly on that, and that definitely. I mean, being the assistant on Elektra Assassin, especially, was, and then I would be the editor. I think on the collected edition, which was fun. But I mean that was a training ground, right? To get Frank Miller scripts coming in, and then see Bill Sienkiewicz, artwork arrive, and like every page was like, what the hell are we looking at? In the best of ways, because it was just every page, every issue, the dial just kept getting cranked higher and higher, and I was very fortunate, to become good personal friends with Bill, over the course of time. But that was an education in comics. And that sort of, I guess, maybe also skews to, because we took the epic mentality of caring for the creators on the creator-owned work, right? The way that we treated them there. and we transferred that. And I watched Joe Duffy do this. You know, Joe Duffy was the editor on Electro Assassin, and the care that she, you know, took with Bill and Frank on a Marvel owned property, right? So this Electro Assassin clearly owned by Marvel,
But
but
because
you
it's a
know the
little more adult, it had to be
more
kind of.
adult came through Epic, but she still, you know, treated them with that, not deference, maybe a little bit. I think she was a little bit starstruck at sometimes, but but with that sort of creative input, like there was not a draconian of like, I'm the editor, done, right? So that's, I guess, what always would surprise me as I learned more about how the guys on the Marvel side, and some really great guys and really smart people, you know, who I admire, and but that was it. They would not have understood my attitude any more than I understood that. Like I always thought it was like kind of flexy, and Greg Wright would tell you this because Greg started in Epic, and then when he went over to the Marvel side and became just a full on Marvel editor, um, you know, that's the way he would always treat creators. Ultimately, he had the say, but he always tried to kind of approach it in that same, like, I'm here to help you tell the best story, you know, type of thing. And if there's a line that's crossed, we're going to have another discussion, obviously. But we would have had the same discussion, you know, at Epic to some extent. But that was, you know, even more surprising to me, I guess, you know, getting over to the Alan Smithy situation of like, you know, what had happened. And, you know, and I'd worked with Ralph for many years at that point, too. So Ralph was a Marvel editor on a Marvel property that I did not own, and yet I always felt like I was being partnered with. Ralph was a really fine individual, and an editor, so I got spoiled by that.
I mean, spoiled. I mean, Can you say, having a good working environment and a good, someone to talk to? Is that really being spoiled, or is that the
Well,
way it's supposed
in the creative spirit, actually, really is honestly.
You
well,
know, you come to think, you're right, Phil. That should be the norm, but you
yeah,
come to think that is the norm in a lot of ways. You
yeah.
know, and I think you do that through. I mean, when I worked in well, I still work in advertising, but when I was a creative director at a you know, one outfit, I had a team of people that worked with me, about 8, 10 people who were kind of the consistent team that I worked with. And they were all, to a person, A-list players, right? High performers, backing each other up, really talented. And you know, and just would get stuff really quickly. Like, here's the creative brief. We get the assignment. We're going to deliver on it. We're going to over deliver on it. Boom, boom, boom. And I worked with those guys for so long that I became like just expected. That's the way it should be, right? It should be, and that's the way it is. So then when I moved on to another firm and another team, I kind of said, "Oh, you guys are going to be the same way." And it was like, you know, oh, it's 3 o'clock. I left the office and I didn't come back, or you know, that's Bob's problem. I'm not gonna help him with that, you know, that sort of thing. So it was a very uh, you know, quick re-education for me. And I think the same thing, you know, with comics. There are editors who work that way, and then there are people who do not work that way.
All right, before we run
I
out of
still think you. Yeah, I'm just gonna say think you did a good job of what you could do.
oh, I
Thank you, Lilith.
was gonna
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
I
And
love,
it's just sad to learn the history behind it,
yeah,
honestly.
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I love some of the, I love the this story, like points in this story where it's like, like where like Fisk is like trying to like, trying to sweet talk the new Daredevil, basically like,
Right,
oh
right,
yeah,
right.
I had such a good partnership with your predecessor. That's the thing, and they're
It's
like,
like
really, really,
When I was trying to kill him, or he was trying to beat
when I
me,
blew up his house and stuff, like,
right, right.
really.
We're beating on each other in
really
Port
putting the love
Authority.
and the love hate relationship there.
Yeah. You know, and I think those are probably obvious. You know, you guys know I respected and enjoyed the time I had, you know, with the characters, and I think even in spite of going into this with misery, right? At that point, I could be a very miserable character. I think I can be miserable nowadays, but not as much or for as long a time. But I could fall into kind of like a young, ruined professional. My life is over. My title is taken away. Um, you know, sense of, you know, just misery and depression. And but even in spite of that, you enjoy the characters. You're writing it, and you probably I I would think I would just fallen into the flow of like, well, he's telling me what to say, you know. So there's those moments where I'm probably forcing the story, and then there's moments where the story is just happening because I had sort of seen ahead. Well, this is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to happen. You know, go together. But thank you. I'm glad reading it. It's not like a, you know, I'm glad it's not a total Alan Smithy production. Um, you know, and there are some moments where, you know, maybe it should have been, you know, by Alan Smithy, you know, with DG Chichester. You know, maybe I should have, you know, if I could go back in and recredit it, maybe I would do that.
No, I was just looking at the synopsis online. It's like, yeah, it's written by D.G. Chichester under a different name.
But until, like, you know, and I thought you guys would have been the first, you know, just because we've been doing this for a while. But you know, nobody's ever just asked me like straight up before, you know, like, which is weird, right? You know, it wasn't until like I think this year I was on some podcast or whatever. And it's like, you know, so like just say straight up, you know, are you Alan Smith? And it was like, and it's kind of like, duh, you know, it's
Yeah,
not
it's
like
like it's like
it's
a
not
no brainer when you know the
it's
history, which I did. So I was just like, duh.
but
And
it's
with
not
your
it's,
film background, it's like, duh, double duh.
yeah, I don't think it was ever, you know, a massively hidden secret, but
Well,
it
I was
was
gonna say at this point I thought it was common knowledge, but I remember like when I was reading these brand new, I didn't know the whole Alan Smithy thing, so
well, sure, sure.
I was just like this writer's good. I'm like, but why did they get rid of Chichester? Did he want to leave?
Right,
I don't
right,
know.
right, right. Yeah. Well, you know, and like from what you guys were saying before, which didn't occur to me until now, that even contributes more to the discordancy of the run, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because it's not me who's doing another 5 issues, which at least would have felt
yeah.
like there was a consistent thread. It's like you're bouncing from Greg to Alan Smithy to Warren Ellis to Mark DeMattis to blah blah blah. So I didn't even think about that ping pong ball.
Yeah, so if you don't know that, yeah, really,
Yeah,
like, yeah, we're just jumping from writer to writer to writer.
And again, we had a lot of that in the '90s too.
Oh
So
wow, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah,
At least they
changing.
let you finish the arc. I mean, there are times that
literally, just
the '90s,
done. You get a feeling, and then it's a new team.
like a new writer will pick up in the middle of an arc in the '90s. It's like,
Sure, yeah, and that's, you know, that may have been in some cases also just due to editorial
yeah,
choice or influence, and sometimes, you know, you would respect that. You know, you'd know the reason for it.
yeah,
I mean, I think I've said to you before, and I'm very honest about it. You know, I was late on the Nick Fury stuff. You know, and that's why I got taken off that title, which I don't like to admit that, and I don't think that's my character, but that was the situation. And Mike Rockwitz, who was the editor,
I think you had such love and care for that character though that you might have been a little indecisive about what to put out. And I think if that's what they decided to do, that's what they decided to do. But that's
well,
their
that's
loss.
yeah.
I
Well,
really
no, I
enjoyed what you did with Nick Fury. So
no, thank you, and I did too. But I think Mike was was right to do that. You know, he's got to keep a schedule, and I was not helping him keep the schedule. But you see the instance there with the next 2 issues, I think, that follow. I think Scott Lobdell came in and scripted them. You know, so that was like a middle of the arc thing in the sense that I had written the plots for the next couple of issues, but then Scott's scripting them. But Scott never talked to me about it. Not that he needed to, but so Scott's really scripting whatever the hell he wants on top of the artwork. You know what I'm saying? So he could have sort of been following the plot, or he could have just been saying, have it say whatever you want, which could also be bizarre for readers sometimes.
oh, we even get to the other point. You killed off Gloriana.
I know. I felt. I don't know. I don't
don't
think I
feel
feel
bad.
bad
It's
about
okay.
that. There had to be something massive in there, and I wasn't going to kill
Yeah.
Karen. I guess that was left for somebody else to do.
Heavens.
But and, did she come back yet? Has she been cloned or whatever?
Oh no, no. What Karen? No,
Nobody's cloned Karen.
No,
What?
no horny Doombot version, nothing.
not yet.
Oh
No.
man, that seems like there's a story waiting to happen.
Yeah, that's a loss.
Oh, there's our Chichester miniseries.
Yeah, thanks. Like that would be my my high point. Like, you know, we'll have they'll clone the porn version of Karen back, and it'll just be like total 90s 2023. But yeah, there had to be a sacrifice. You know, there had to be something really really harsh and hard in that
Yeah.
story, and that felt like something that made sense at the time. I don't like just killing people arbitrarily, but
no, it raises the stakes. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to make sure that was your decision and that wasn't like an editor.
Everything in the story was my decision. I take all credit and all blame for everything. There was no, beyond the fact of like, here, let us slam you on the side of the head with a 2x4 at the beginning of you probably writing the majority of this. There was no editorial interference, or, for your last 5 issues, you've got to have them, dance in Central Park and you do whatever, busk for 5 issues or something like that, or before you leave, destroy the costume or something like that. There was none of that.
No, yeah, I mean, obviously they could have clearly asked you to kind of get it a little bit back to status quo, but they didn't, and that's kind of a, since they did what they did with the next issue, so it's like you could have gone gracefully.
Yeah, I mean, again, my mental image of Marie's choices that she was in, whether they were her own or the things she was being influenced to do, was just like, this is a crappy situation. Let the guy do it. Let him go out with as much grace as possible, and he gets to make the decisions. The only like tactical decision you would think they would have made would have been, if they were going to do that follow Warren comedy special, would have been to have me introduce flaws in the costume in that 5 issues, right? Sort of like set it up that this is a piece of shit, and there's literally cracks in the seams and all that kind of stuff. And then it would have been like, oh, you didn't work out for me. Let me talk to you for 22 pages. The best part would have been if the costume started talking back. That would have been awesome, right? Does it talk back? I don't think it does. That would be pretty cool.
No. I mean, you would have been down for it if they would have said, hey, okay, we'll give you a couple more months. 350 will be your last. Can you please have him back to status quo at 350? I mean, you would have did that, right?
Well, yeah, but they would never have done that with that sort of decision making behind the scenes.
Yeah, like I said, if you actually read about what was going on, like,
that would never have happened. But that was my plan. Wasn't total status quo, but that was certainly to kind of address the whole Batlin arc, if you want to call it that, of what has he done, what does it mean to be Batlin, what does it mean, more importantly, to have given up Matt Murdock, right, and what does Matt Murdock mean to the,
and it's weird because it's a well that they kind of go back to where Matt just kind of takes off for a while from being Matt Murdock, so
right. So anyway, it's I'm glad we got to give Alan his moment on the mic in the sun,
from Barbados.
And from now, folks, if you want to find him, he's an expat in Barbados, sipping whatever they sip on the Barbados beach, and smoking whatever they smoke in the Barbados mid-tide there. I actually had a guy, I went to Barbados once for a wedding, and I had a guy like offer to sell me some weed in the water, like like I'm out there in the water, and
now that's customer service.
It was customer service. It was awesome. He's like, how you doing, man? I'm not gonna try to do patois or whatever, but like, how you doing? You having a great time, enjoying the island? It's like, what are you here for? I mean, just lovely, pleasant conversation. And then he pulls out from below the water level, a plastic bag he's got with him.
I moved to the wrong place, Phil.
with the ganja, with the weed, whatever, like in there, like, hey, you party, you want some, you want to buy some stuff. It's like, my friend, I get enjoyment in life in other ways. Thank you very much. So, but he had it all sealed up in his bag, and then he could sell it to you sealed up in other bags. So he was ready to do business. It wasn't like he had to come back to the shore. Could have just done business right there. I don't know how he would have thought I would have had money with me, out there.
I actually know people who randomly take their wallets into the ocean with them, like when we go fishing and like scuba diving and stuff.
Yeah,
like that is a thing.
Yeah, totally. So it was a very entrepreneurial approach always stuck with me.
Oh, that's the origin story. Thank you for your business, Mr. Smithy, Alan Smithy.
Exactly. So Alan is now running a drug cartel in Barbados. So for what people will say.
Oh no, I was about to say I thought Alan Smithy had a Kickstarter, but it's being put together by Mr. G.G. Chichester.
Oh. Well, we'll see. We'll see what he's up to. And I'm speaking for him now, so I get to say whatever I want.
You're his manager.
Exactly. Doesn't know what I'm setting him up for.
Oh, but speaking of all that, I mean, you have a new project coming here soon, don't you?
Yeah, how's that coming together? We like to just check in with
Well,
you.
actually, I have 2 new projects now. There's this Kickstarter one, which is kicking along really well, and I maybe by next time we get together, I can share with you the logo and a little bit more detail around that. I just want to make sure everything's kind of
Can
like
we send
locked
him
up.
to Will for if you want to like promote your Kickstarter? We have a friend Will who does.
Oh yeah, one of my other co-hosts, he does a show where him and his co-host just talk to.
Oh, love it.
He's done his own couple of comics as well.
Yeah,
So
that would be super, guys. Thanks. And then Black Box Comics contacted me. Actually, last summer we met at the Mohegan Sun Terrificon, and they have asked me to develop a new character with them. So I'm actually I've outlined I think 5 issues, and then working on the script for the first one of those. I don't know what their schedule is. It's not tomorrow, but it's not 10 years in the future, so they do some fun range of different characters and stuff.
I read Dream Master by them.
Yeah, Dream Master is pretty cool. Yeah, so I actually have a tiny little scene with Dream Master in one of them. Tiny, like 2 panels, but it's fun, because they had the concept. Dimitrios Zaharakis, who's the editor and the publisher, had a jumping off point, so we jumped off that point together.
Very cool.
Developed. I don't know what it's. I don't know. I know what I want to call it. I don't know what he wants to call it yet. So we're going to talk on Wednesday to actually.
And if I can recommend some other Black Book comics, I think if I remember right, Gin Hunters by them as well. I just picked up, and Dr. Wilder is really cool too.
I haven't read that one. I would like.
Yeah, I'm big into indie now. Indie books.
Yeah. So they're good. I mean, they look great. He's very passionate about comics, and I think he's finding a lot of new talent. But I was very. He actually contacted me a couple of years ago through Scott McDaniel, because I think Scott had worked on his first title, but I wasn't in a good place at that time. I was still kind of more deeply entrenched in some of the corporate advertising, and I didn't really take the invitation he had and run with it so much. So I'm glad he reached back out. I've been having a lot of fun with that.
Very happy. Can't wait to see what comes from that for sure.
Oh yeah,
thanks.
Once all this stuff is out, we need to talk about it here. But yeah, anytime like you're just like if you want to throw up any previews or anything, send me the images. I mean,
yeah. Let's do that. Let's do that next time. I'll definitely this other one, whether the Kickstarter is ready to go or not, but it will be soon. Yeah. I'll definitely can start throwing out some info, so you got some stuff to show off.
Oh yeah, so especially when the campaign's going on. Oh yeah, we can do an episode just on.
Thank you guys. Yeah, appreciate that. That.
Oh, Will's gonna get a kick out of it. We'll tell him to be nice, but he's always nice.
He's so nice. I mean, you're
so nice.
You're the mean one, Lil. Jeez.
I know.
Well, let me get myself some more coffee. Thank you guys. As always, check out storymaze.substack.com. We'll talk before my next convention appearance, and we'll promote that as well. I hope you guys stay well, and Lilith, enjoy your new locale and your travels. And if we want to get together in Barbados for for a special episode, you just let me know.
Will do, Bucko.
For medicinal treatments. Do you want your homework for next time?
Oh yes, yeah. What's my homework?
I figured we'll do the other milestone series you did, Hardware, which is Hardware 45 through 50. So.
Yeah, great stuff. Love the milestone work. Thank you for that, bringing that up. Definitely, I will make myself smart on that again.
Well, I think I was trying to mix it up anyway, but I figure we'll try to mix it up now because next year I'm sure we'll be talking a lot of Daredevil for some reason. Because
I
that
don't know
TV show,
why.
yeah.
I don't know why. You know, did I tell you guys I met Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio?
No, you did not.
No.
So I wasn't. So we're extending our episode by a couple of minutes.
Oh,
So because I was
I'm
at
always
this
worried about
Bonus.
bonus.
I'm worried about you getting sick of us. No, go as long as you want. Go.
Or we could save this for next time. No, it was fun. It was the Richmond show. So I was with I was at this Richmond GalaxyCon, and I knew Charlie Cox was going to be there. So I was saying I gotta get a photo op with Charlie Cox. So the guy who brought me down there, Spencer Beck, is tight with the organizers, and he set up. He said, I'm going to get you in with Charlie Cox. And it was John Romita Jr. was there as well, and Ann Nesenti was there as well.
Wow.
So we all kind of like moved in on poor Charlie just as he was trying to kind of get his flight out of there. But he was super gracious. But we got maybe 22 seconds with him to say hi and talk about we've all worked on Daredevil. But then it was one of those photos where like 4 people had cameras, so nobody was looking in the same direction. So fortunately somebody took photos with like one of those like Apple Live photos, where it like gets multiple frames.
Yeah.
So I was able to find well, here's the frame where Anne's looking at one camera, here's the frame where I'm looking at one camera, and I brought them all together. But then as I was going through the green room, which is the room behind the scenes, where the guests can get some snacks and water and such, or just chill out, I saw Vincent D'Onofrio sitting there, just kind of checking his phone out. He wasn't on the phone, but I said, I can't not say hi to this guy. And so I introduced myself, and I didn't think it was good policy to like try to get a photo op back in the green room. That would be like, hi, I'm a guest and you're a guest. But I'll tell you, first he gets up, and he is the kingpin, right? I mean, he is a big man.
Yeah.
And so suddenly the kingpin is looming over you, which is rather scary. But the nicest guy on the planet. I mean, so nice. I did not tell him that I wrote a story called The Fall of the Kingpin, but I chose not to do that, or wasn't smart enough to do that. But it was interesting just talking to him for 5 minutes or so, just how much credit he gave to comics on the interpretation, of his character. He couldn't have established that more, which I thought was really interesting and telling of how much the comics have had an influence on these people, and the way they interpret it, which is pretty cool. It's not just like getting a character and saying, oh, you're the kingpin of crime and figure it out. They're really leveraging the work that's been done, and the creative contribution sort of carries through.
Oh, the only way that Charlie Cox picture could have been better is if you were holding that 3D printed helmet.
Yeah, I didn't think that would have worked so well, but or I was wearing it. Hi, Mr. Cox. Do you want to wear it too?
Big fan.
Yeah, exactly. It's got locks on the back. You can't take it off. It's like Saw. No, I didn't go that way. Anyway, that's the perfect opportunity to end this program.
Definitely. Go out on a high note. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
All right. So yes, thank you, sir. You did mention the newsletter, right?
Yep. And you guys stay well, and I'll do my homework, and we'll see each other in a little bit.
Yes.
All right. Have a great one.
Thank you, sir.
Be well. Take care.